couple minutes for people to click on. So for those who are going to be watching this pre-recorded, because it will be up to the YouTube channel and as a live, but you can watch it after. So I'm on with Caryn Gardiner, and so she's from the Washington area. So I figured right now, I always like to know what markets are like in different areas. So why not bring somebody from not only just a different country, but probably one of the most popular places within that country, just because that's where the White House, everything is. So Caryn, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. I'm Caryn Gardiner, and as Brad says, I'm a realtor here in DC and also in Maryland, and I've been doing this for about 17 years. So started when I was a child. Just kidding. And yeah, it's a bit crazy right now, especially in DC, as you can imagine. There's a lot going on here.
Yeah, how's it? Has the real estate market there been crazy too, like it kind of is in the GTA?
Since April, I would say it's gotten like really insane. There's just no inventory. And so anytime where there's no inventory, no matter where you are, the demand's going to be higher. And because interest rates are so low, there's more buyers. So more buyers, less houses. It's just been insane. And then you throw an election into the mix and everybody just gets a little frenetic.
When COVID first happened, because I remember with us here, I think it was pretty much Canada-wide, where in March, once Ontario considered it in a state of emergency, where kind of like everything just kind of shut down, the real estate market at that point was just crazy. So it was kind of how it is now, with multiple offers, no inventory, so many buyers that were just trying to look into getting into a property. And then once that happened, it just stopped because everyone was just scared. Like they were scared to go outside. It was just, they felt uncomfortable. They didn't really know anything. So from March until about mid-June, things were just kind of like really, really slow. So any of the buyers that kind of bought during that time, they did really well. But then after June, it's just the prices have skyrocketed. Has it been any different where you are?
I think so, because I remember we started hearing about the pandemic around February. And then I remember I had a listing, and it was 1.2 million in Montgomery County, which is, so Maryland and Virginia border DC, just to give you a little context. And so when you work in DC and you work in Maryland or Virginia, it's usually right outside of DC. Even though I'm licensed in the entire state of Maryland, I focus on Montgomery County, which is the county that borders DC. So I remember I had a listing, it was 1.2 million, and it went under contract in February, end of February, and it's supposed to close probably 30 days later, end of March. And then the pandemic hit and everything got shut down. And we had gone through everything in that particular transaction except for the closing. And I represented the sellers. I was a listing agent. And the buyers completely got scared and freaked out. So they weren't going to go to closing. And they wanted to wait 2 months to see what would happen. And everything had been signed. There was no contingency, nothing, no way out. But they literally said, we're not going to go to closing. So anyway, we had to work it out, which we had to with attorneys. And we worked it out. We ended up closing 60 days after that. And my sellers got more money because of it. But there was like a couple months, like when it first started, that nobody really knew if you were going to leave your house, if it was going to be safe, like how are we going to practice real estate? Were we essential workers? But very quickly, I would say within a month after that, after the shutdown, when things opened up just even a little bit, realtors were essential workers, and buyers, especially renters, really wanted to get out of their homes and move into single families. And the next listing I had, I got 8 offers, and it was listed at $865 and went for $967. Just to give you an idea how much higher it went. So very quickly, I think that we, steamrolled into this incredible seller's competitive market.
Mm-hmm. And is it fueling by the lack of inventory there?
Yeah, I think it's the perfect storm. I mean, there's just so little inventory, and you have this influx of buyers. Like I do both sellers and buyers, right? So probably 65% sellers, 35% buyers, but I do both. So buyers I had weren't planning on buying for like 3 to 5 years. And because of the pandemic, they don't want to be in an apartment anymore. They don't want to share elevators. They don't want to share hallways. So you have all these buyers that were probably going to wait that are now in the market. Interest rates here are like in the mid twos right now, ridiculously low. So it's a perfect opportunity for buyers. And yet the sellers, unless they have to sell or they had already planned on selling, have no place to go because they don't want to downsize into an apartment anymore because of the pandemic. Yeah. So there's no inventory. So it's like this perfect storm, and it just creates a really frenetic market. And I'm not really happy. I'm not really crazy about this market, to be honest. I find it very unfair.
Yeah. No, I find this the same way, because what I find when you have people who are looking to buy something, in markets like this, they don't get to be picky and find the perfect place. It's kind of like they end up sacrificing a little bit in terms of what they're looking for, because if they're waiting for the perfect one, by the time that comes, who knows how many offers there's going to be on it, and there's no guarantee you're going to get it. In a more of a balanced market, if something gets listed and you like it, kind of worst case scenario, you might have to pay full price because the sellers aren't going to be too flexible. Now
do you have a lot of fallouts, like people that are going under contract and then canceling after?
I wouldn't say there's a lot of it. I do see a couple times on the MLS, they'll say like deal fell through and it happened 2 months after they sold it. So that was like they couldn't close on the property type thing. It doesn't happen way too much. What does happen, you're seeing a little bit of people having accepted offers and then kind of not delivering the deposit check the next day. And here in Canada, and I'm not sure how real estate is in the States, other than watching $1 Million Listing.
That's the way it is.
Is it like deposit is part of the offer acceptance? Like you're giving money upon an accepted offer, and when they don't deliver it, a lot of times people think like, oh, they just can't deliver it, and then they're out of the deal. Where if you get a seller who's going to have a lawyer who's not going to just let it go, just because you don't deliver the deposit doesn't mean that you're out of it. But at the same time, not a lot of sellers want to do that, and they just kind of want to move in or move on so that they're not having to worry about it. So it hasn't been too bad with that, but you do see at times just people who can't close on the property, where something happened with their mortgage, where maybe they weren't fully pre-approved like they thought they were, and then come closer to closing, they find out that instead of putting 15% down, they need to put 20% down, or sometimes even more. Or if a property doesn't appraise, because in markets like this, there's no guarantees that the property you bought and what you offered for is going to get appraised at that. So if it doesn't get appraised, you have to come up with the difference.
Right. Yeah, it's the same here. But what I'm seeing, and a lot of times this isn't reflected in the MLS, because listing agents like myself, I just did it recently, because we had multiple offers in the property. If it falls through, we just go to the next one without having to put it back on the market.
Okay.
And I'm finding it's just because of what you just said, that buyers are just throwing contracts at properties without really getting a chance to go a couple times and see if they like it. And maybe they are sacrificing the school district they wanted for one that's not exactly what they wanted, because they just want to get a house because they're sick of losing in multiple offers. And then once they get the contract accepted, then they're changing their mind. And if they have a way out, whether they had an inspection period, or maybe there's a homeowners association or a condo association where they have a doc review period, which is a hard out here.
Yeah.
A lot of times they're getting out of it.
One thing I was actually hoping you could answer this, because watching $1 Million Listing.
I've never seen it, by the way. Just put it out there.
It's a cool show, but you'll see it where it's like, they'll be like, okay, well, I'm ready to enter escrow, or my people are ready to go into escrow. I have no idea what that means, because here we don't have that. Like there you have like escrow officers or something like that. I have no idea what that means.
So every state is different. Okay, so I was licensed in California before I was licensed here. And in California, we do escrow. Here in Maryland and DC, it's called a wet state. So there is no escrow like you're talking about. Everything's done at the closing table. You bring all the money to the closing table, and everything's signed there, and the checks are dispersed there, and everyone walks away with either keys or a check. Whereas in California, you never go to a closing table. Everything's in escrow. So once you go into escrow, it's like they take over, and then it closes, and then you get paid a couple of days after that. So it depends what state. In New York, they use lawyers. Here we, as realtors, write all the contracts. So every state is different. And because it's been 15 years since I moved back here, I don't know if I can really tell you what they do in California anymore. It's been too long.
Okay. Well, I think you explained the whole escrow part of it. I was just never sure of it. Like you would hear them talking about it all the time, but because here in Canada, like there's not one province that does that whole escrow process.
Yeah.
Here it's like, the realtors are the ones that are, for the most part, are writing the contracts, and then it goes to the lawyers. So the lawyers get copies of everything, and they're the ones that change title. They're the ones that take the money from the buyers and like part of their deposit, and then the bank money. So like the mortgage money goes into the lawyers, and then the lawyers disperse it amongst themselves. And then so like that's kind of the process that they do there. And then like once the money's been transferred, that's when the title gets changed on.
So you use lawyers for everything in Canada. Is that everywhere in Canada or just Toronto?
Yeah, no, it's everywhere. Like it's the same kind of process. I'm pretty sure about that. I know in Ontario for sure that's how it is, but I've never heard anybody. And I did a live with somebody from Montreal, and they kind of said the same thing, where it was lawyers that kind of handle all the closings. But yeah, so it's done easier. Like, I don't know, it's more straightforward, I guess.
Yeah, so here we have lawyers who do the closing, but that lawyer represents the contract. They don't represent the buyer or the seller.
So does one lawyer
realtors
actually...
are doing writing the contract. Sorry?
So like, do the buyer and seller share one lawyer?
Right. So it's not, so the buyer actually will pick the settlement attorney per the contract, but the actual attorney they don't represent the buyer or the seller. They represent the contract. So basically by that point, the realtors on both sides have written all the contracts, all the addendums, all the inspections, all the repairs. This is in Maryland and DC. It's different in every state. Yeah. Like New York, they just do lawyers. Realtors just show properties. But here we write the contracts. And then the lawyer at this closing table, remember everybody comes, although now it's all kind of virtual because of the pandemic, we'll just go through the contract and make sure everything is done and go through the settlement sheet and go through the numbers and explain them, and then have everybody sign everything and everyone walks away, and they'll disperse the money.
Okay. Yeah, it's weird. So here it's like the buyers have to get their own lawyer. The sellers have their own lawyer, and the seller's lawyer and the buyer's lawyer are the ones that handle all the closings. And then typically once there's a firm offer, if there's any issues at that point, then the lawyers will handle and negotiate it. But yeah, so it's neat. I didn't know that. Like I didn't know what the process was in the States there. And I know each state is different, but like in Maryland, that type area. So within the three, because you're close to 3 different states, right?
Yeah. So I actually right now I'm in Maryland. I was born in DC. So DC, like I said, it's surrounded by Maryland, Virginia. I'm not licensed in Virginia because I just choose not to be, because you have to cross over a river and I don't know where I am. And but a lot of agents are. They're licensed in all 3. I chose to just focus on Maryland and DC. And even within Maryland, I focus on Montgomery County, which is borders DC, as opposed to Annapolis, which is 45 minutes away, or Baltimore, which is 45 minutes away. I mean, so it's different parts of Maryland are definitely different cultures. And where I am, it's much more aligned with DC. Okay.
And then like the people that you find that are moving into the DC area or the Maryland area, where are they coming from?
So we have a lot of government jobs here, as you can imagine. Here in Bethesda, where I am, we have the NIH, the National Institute of Health. We have obvious government jobs because our government is in DC. So you have a lot of people moving in. We have the World Bank, we have IMF. So there's so many different opportunities for work. AstraZeneca, these are all big companies. I'm sure you've heard of most of them. So people will come to DC for that, to work either in the government or government affiliated companies or NIH. And that brings a lot of people here. And then it's a really cool city. So a lot of people just come and to live here because it's a really great city and a great location. if you want to go to Europe, if you want to go to Toronto, if you want to go to a lot of places from DC, it's very centralized.
Okay. And so I guess, what do you like most? Yeah, I've never been there. I'm not very well traveled, period. I've been to Cuba, Dominican, and then the place in the States that I've kind of gone, because it's on the Ontario border in Buffalo, no, in New York, is Cheektowaga. That's a place that I always like to go to. And
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah,
is that like Niagara Falls or something? I have no idea.
Yeah, it's really close to Niagara Falls, and we liked it because, especially like when my wife and I were getting married in Niagara Falls, we would always stay in the States because the States has different stuff and things are different. Like I remember going to Buffalo, and I don't know if it's the same thing in Washington or Maryland, where we got there at like 2 o'clock in the morning, and we're like, "What time is last call?" And I think we were asking the hotel clerk, and they're like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "What time do the bars close, the restaurants?" And they're like, "Well, when everyone kind of goes." So they had no like set time in terms of when they're stop serving alcohol. Where in Ontario, it's like 1:30. Oh, geez, I don't know. It's been so long since I've gone clubbing or bar hopping or anything like that. I think either 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning is last call. So it's like after that, bars close. They can't serve alcohol, and so that was kind of neat. But what I liked about going there was the restaurants. Like in Canada, they don't really have IHOP, where
that's what you like.
So that is solid breakfast food. And like we can go to a place like Denny's, that would be like the closest thing we have, and it's like a $40 to $50 breakfast. We went to IHOP and the portions were bigger, the food was better, and geez, it was like $28 or something like that for me and my wife to go. That was back when the Canadian American dollar was more at par. Right now, it's not so much.
What is it right now? I don't even know. What is the Canadian dollar compared to the American dollar?
I don't know exactly, but it's in and around 70 cents. So it could be high. It could be in the 60s. It could be in the 70s, like one of those two. Where 6 years ago, it was almost at par. Like it was like we went there with if we had $100, we were getting like $97 or something like that.
Oh, nice. I remember I went to college in the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. So we used to go to Windsor in Canada for the same reason, because you could drink there. If you were 18 and you couldn't in Michigan, in the States. So it's funny you brought that up. I haven't been to Canada in a while. I was when we were in school, we would go to Montreal for French class, like for our school trip. You guys don't come to DC no?
No, we do. No, there's 2 trips. So yeah, they have the Washington trip, and then normally it's like you do a vote. So you can pick, and this was back like many years ago when I was in grade 8, I believe. And you get it. It's a vote. So it's either you go to Washington or you can go to Hershey, Pennsylvania. And the year we went, our trip got canceled for some reason. I forget what it was, but so we didn't have that trip.
I don't know why you would go to Hershey except for to go to the actual Hershey Park.
I think it was is there a Hershey plant there where they actually make chocolate?
Yeah. There's a Hershey Park, and it's fun, but it's like one's like an amusement park with chocolate, and the other is the capital of the United States. It's like an odd choice to make. Every kid would probably rather go to Hershey. I don't know why you would go to DC.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I think the whole chocolate part was kind of what had a lot of people down for that.
We also have, sorry?
What's I'm just thinking the questions that I hear watching TV and about the States real estate and stuff. What's an FHA loan or a VA loan?
So those are government loans. So the VA loan is for veterans or active military. And they have special programs for our military or our veterans that they will incorporate into the VA loan. A lot of times they have really good interest rates, and they're very they're really good loans. I think sometimes realtors get scared of them because they don't understand them, but I've done a bunch of them, and the only real difference is the appraisals are a little bit stricter because they'll have certain provisions that you have to abide by, and they'll make the seller do them. The most common one is they want railings on stairs, even if there's stairs leaving the house to go down to the yard. If there's not a railing, they'll always tell you to put a railing on every stairway, for example. Okay. FHA loans are also government loans, but they're nothing to do with the military. And they were popular for a while after 2008, 2009, when everything went crazy here, the government loans came back and they were popular because you didn't have to put as much down. But now the conventional loans, things started getting a little bit calmer, after 2008. And now in 2020, the conventional loans have programs so you don't have to put 20% down. So most people will err on the side of a conventional loan. As far as the sellers and the listing agents, they prefer the conventional loans because they're just more flexible when it comes to the appraisals. I personally, I think they're all fine, because if there's something to be fixed, then it probably should be.
Yeah. What is the minimum that you can buy a house with there? Like if you went through the the government loans.
But yeah, you can do 100% financing.
Okay, but that would be a benefit of being the military, so I can understand that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I guess the Canadian military isn't as, it's here, but it's not as well known as it would be in the States, or I guess as common. I guess the military in the States is a lot larger than the military in Canada. So I don't know of any programs, plus I'm not near any military bases to really ever experience that at all. But so with a VA loan, you can go 100% financing.
You can, yeah. And I have people that not necessarily are in active military, which obviously the VA loan will be good for that. But I've had, people that went to college through ROTC program, which is a military program. It helped them pay for college. So they still had to serve, and they're then allowed to use VA loans. I had recently had a doctor, and she's a psychiatrist, children's psychiatrist, but she was in the military, so she could do a VA loan. And there's just a lot of advantages. It just depends where you want to put your money. Right now, the interest rates are just so low that I don't really see why anyone wouldn't do conventional. I mean, the bottom line is the best rate you can get. So I would say the majority of people right now are doing conventional. But I just had a VA loan recently on another property. And it's interesting because with all these multiple offers and all this craziness, everyone's trying to think of the best way to sweeten their offer besides just adding more money to it. And one of the things I see is buyers writing these letters to sellers, personal letters. And I do it as well for my buyers. I tell them to write a letter, to try to be very thoughtful about it, but not too specific, because you never know what the seller's looking for. I mean, you may say, oh, I want to raise my kids there, and the seller doesn't have kids, and so they're not going to care, right? Yeah. But so you want to keep it broad enough. But the most effective letters I've seen is when it's VA and when there are two people that have been either in the military or associated with the military. They seem to have a very strong bond. And I've seen the letters be really effective in those circumstances.
I can see that. I've encouraged those letters as well, because I find it's not for the most part, on average, it's probably not going to hurt you. Worst case scenario, it's not going to make a difference, because people are just going to care about the money. They're not going to care about the story behind the people that want to move into it. But I remember there was one, and there was a bidding war. I forget the number. I think maybe the property was valued in and around listed at $599, and we went in at $650 or $630. It was the first offer I had written with these people, and so they wrote a letter, and I told them, just outline your story. You came here from South Africa. You've been living in Toronto for the last 2 years. You had a child, and you're looking to buy a home that you can raise your child in. Just like that, nothing oh, don't make stuff up. Just tell the truth. And maybe it will help you, especially if you're close, because with bidding wars, I'm pretty sure it's the same where you are in the the Washington, Maryland area, where when you're bidding, you have no idea what the other bids are. So if you're close, that letter might be able to help. And I had not been successful on one offer, but I called the listing agent just for feedback to can you tell me anything that can help us in the future on different properties? And she's like, the letter was really good. And she's like, you had the wife crying because she felt so bad that your offer was 20 grand less than the other offer, that they were really considering taking your offer because of the letter, because it explained how they came here from South Africa 3 years ago. They're buying their first house, and then they have, I think it was a 10-month-old. And so it almost worked. Maybe almost worked, but it was I've never had it where it's like, oh, your letter actually hurts you.
Well, so you say that you're just guessing at what the other offers are. So we don't really do that here. We use escalation clauses. You don't use those?
Nope.
So it's interesting. So when I started real estate in California, like I said, and we didn't have them there either. It was, like you said, like a guessing game, and then everything would go into escrow. But here we use escalation clauses. So basically it's a 2-page addendum that goes with your offer. So let's say the house is, I don't know, $700,000. And you write for the list price, $700,000, but then you escalate to whatever your cap is. So let's say your cap is $750,000. So in this addendum, it'll say, my cap is $750,000, and that's my cap. And then my factor is the amount you're willing to go above the next offer. So let's say your factor is $5,000. So I wrote for $700,000, capping at $750,000. You wrote for $700,000, capping at $725,000. I'm going to get the house for $730,000. You following me?
Yeah.
So that's the way it's done here. And I find it much more fair because everyone's got their walk away number. And I say when I'm working with buyers, I'm like, there's got to be a number where if it goes even $5,000 over that or $2,000 over that, you're okay because you just don't think it's worth that or you don't want to pay that. Yeah. And therefore, with the escalation addendum, you can really put your cap, and then hopefully it won't get there. Normally it does because it's in this market. So you have to be prepared to pay it.
Yeah.
But there's a chance you won't, that you'll just pay X amount over the next offer.
I like that. Like I've heard about escalation clauses, but I didn't know how they worked. So the fact that it's much more out in the open, because here you could sit there and let's just say a property is listed at 700,000. You could bid 850,000. And the second highest offer to you is 775. So you just paid 75 grand more for a property than your closest competitor. And sometimes, because here what will happen is you submit an offer, and then most times the listing agent will call if there's a few offers that are close and say the same thing. You're in the top, top of the offers. Offers are close. Do you want to do anything to sweeten your offer? Which means, do you want to come up with more money? Do you want to waive any of your conditions? Pretty much, do you want to make any changes to it? And there's times that somebody who's already 10 grand in the lead will boost up their price another 5,000, and now they're 15,000 in the lead, and they competed against themselves.
That's the way it was when I was in California. I find this a much better way. Some people don't like the escalation clauses, but I think they're a better way to do it and you have to prove it too. So let's say, like I said, I got it at 730. The listing agent would have to show me the other offer I escalate against, your offer at 725. We cross out the name so that, for privacy reasons, but I have to see what I escalated against to make it all fair. And then the buyer has to actually accept the new price. So it's a bit of a process, but I do think it's more fair. Now, having said that, this particular market right now in 2020, people are doing such crazy things that I've seen buyers agents come in with contracts with an escalation with no cap. And that to me is just crazy. So they're basically saying we'll pay $5,000 or $10,000 over the next offer. And they're depending on the sanity of and wishes of other people because they're just getting so desperate. And I have a real problem with that. I just think that it's just not the way to do things. And I think it's a strategy more than anything. So when that's happened to me as a listing agent, I'll actually kind of vet it out and call the buyer's agent and be like, there's got to be a cap and I want to know what it is.
Because what happens if there's two offers that have the exact same escalation clause with no cap?
Exactly. I mean, it's like I said, I think it's a strategy more than a real thing. Sorry, my earring's just banging against this thing. And I don't like it. But there's been a lot of desperation. And that's why I think there's been some fallout. And I also think that there's a lot of red flags that are going to happen in the next couple of years because of what's happening now. And I don't want to be like all doom and gloom, but there's just a lot going on that people aren't talking about. Everywhere I go, and I'm sure it's the same with you, Brad, you're like, how's the market? Isn't it great? Oh my God, it's amazing. Everyone's got multiple offers. My house is worth so much more. And that's all anyone talks about. And I just sit there and I'm like, yes, that's definitely true. If you have a single family house and you have a place to go, you're going to do really great. But there's a lot of other stuff going on that people aren't talking about.
No, it's true. Like, you never think of the stress. So, you sell your house and the people can't close on it. And let's just say the market shifts within that time. You planned if you got, a top amount of dollar, and then, the next offer or whatever, you can't sell them the house for less, or you have to deal with not being able to close on your house. So there's the stress of it as a buyer. And then, as a seller, but then as a buyer, you're dealing with like, competing on everything. Like, liking a house is nothing. Like that's frustrating. Like when you're buying, and you don't go for what you like the most. You go with kind of what odds do you have on getting that property.
I know.
How much are you willing to pay for it? And like here, like I'd say maybe of 10 homes that get listed, 9 of them sell firm with no conditions at all. So no finance,
no inspection, no financing, nothing.
So it's kind of like that, and they're giving like $20,000 or $50,000 deposit, which goes to the listing brokerage. So pretty much, if it was listed, or let's just say they were accepting offers on the, it's listed on the Monday and they're accepting offers the following Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Once that offer is signed and that deposit check is deposited, it's a firm deal. Like, they're like 100% firm.
So what if there are things wrong with the house? They just find out later?
Yeah, or they don't know about it.
Really?
That's where, when you're here, like, so
do you do pre-inspections? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've seen people doing them, but they're not common, because again, you're doing a pre-inspection, and so you're spending how many hundreds of dollars to have this pre-inspection done, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get it. And so I had one where I was the winning bid on the property, and then I guess one of the buyer's agents that wasn't successful, they did a pre-inspection, and they messaged me to know if I wanted to buy their home inspection report, so I can give it to my seller so that they would know what was wrong with it. But this was a trade to give to my buyers, to my, like, so somebody I was competing against, they didn't win, but they spent like $400 for an inspection.
Right.
And they wanted to know, do I want it to give to my buyers so that they could know kind of what's wrong with the house, if anything. And I was like, he's in the trades. He kind of, on our viewing, did the inspection himself. And then I'm like, he's okay. But yeah, so like pre-inspections, they happen, but they're not super common. And yeah, so like 9 out of 10 deals are firm. And that's just crazy. So if you're working with people, first-time home buyers, where let's just say they're going 5% down, they're nervous, because if the house, for whatever reason, does not get appraised at that amount that they paid for it, they got to come up with the difference. And I don't know everybody's situation, but in 2012, when I was buying my first house, I was like scraping the barrel to be able to close, because you save, but then you get to a point where you're like, I don't want to save anymore. I just want to buy something. And so yeah, like if my house that we bought didn't appraise at the value, I would have been.
So what would happen?
To close.
What happens then?
You have to find a way to come up with the extra money.
What if you can't? I mean, like, do you just lose your deposit? Is it automatic?
So it's not automatic. It has to go through the courts. So like in that case, if you have, let's just say you submitted a firm offer, and you're still getting financing. So the banks are still going to want an appraisal. So although you're firm, the seller will still let you into the house for the appraiser to do the appraisal, just to make sure that the values are what they say they are. But then sometimes you'll have people that don't get a mortgage because of the appraisal, where the home appraises less, and in that case, they have to find a way, whether it's like family members that they can like have the money gifted to them, or because you can't even sit there and pull it off of a credit card or get a loan to cover the difference. So it's a spot, luckily, and I don't know how it is in the States, but I haven't seen many appraisals not appraise at what the value of the purchase is,
regardless of how much over asking it goes.
Yeah, and I haven't seen it both on the listing side, like when I've had to deal with letting the appraisals in and everything like that. And then again on the buyer side. And I've been in, this is the third time now where things have been just insanely competitive for the, in it being a seller's market. And so 2017 was one, and then earlier this year was another, and then we're living through it right now. And so I've never seen it. And I sold my own house. It was a $599 semi-detached, and we sold it for $661,000.
Oh my God! They're going a lot over asking.
Yeah, and they weren't even competing with anybody else. They were just the only offer.
They were the only offer, and they wrote that much over?
Yeah, because what would happen, what you'll see here is two. So they'll price homes low, and if they don't get what they want, they will actually just kind of do either a price change to whatever price they really wanted for the house, or they cancel the listing, relist it at a higher price, and then list it like a normal property where, it's not offer holdbacks for 4 days, and they'll accept offers anytime pretty much, because at that point they just want to get that price. So what you would have is sometimes there's no other offers on places. People will still bid high because they know that the seller does want more, and if they don't get it, they're just going to relist it at a higher price.
Oh my God, it's like such a game.
It is. So
right?
What strategy? So it's a complete game. And even when you're bidding on properties where, let's just say you're the only offer, sometimes people will say, okay, we'll just give them the list price. Like, they're okay with that. I'm like, you have to start lower, because if you give them list price, they know you really want the house and you'll probably pay more. So they'll sign it back at 20 grand more than what it's being listed for. So offer them, 5 or 10,000 less, which is not offensive, and hope that they sign it back at what it's being listed for. And then you want to act quickly.
But in your circumstances, with like you're talking about, that you listed it for, what did you say, for $599?
Yeah.
And you got 60,000 over?
Yeah, 61,000 over.
But that was like the first offer they wrote was that much over?
Yeah. I didn't sign it back. I didn't do anything other than changing the closing date. I accepted the offer as was. I was happy with it. And they were happy with it, because at that time, this was when things were just changing, and townhomes in my area, so mine was a semi-detached, townhomes in my area were going for 700,000. So if they were happy that they got a semi-detached for less than what the townhomes are going for, I was happy because I was getting more than any other comparable property that was a semi-detached in my area. So it was kind of like a win-win. And so it worked out, but
it's just so interesting, because I always say you can't underprice a house. The market will tell you it will get bid up, but you can certainly overprice a house. And even now in this crazy market, if houses are overpriced or if they need a lot of work, they're not going at multiple offers right away, because people don't want contractors in their house. It's a pandemic. They don't want, they want to just move in and get it cleaned and, not deal with anybody. Which is understandable, but you still have to price it right. But what you're saying is it's a strategy in Toronto to underprice it and then just hope it lands where you want it to land. It's crazy.
Yeah, which is frustrating too for a lot of people, because you'll see homes that are listed on the MLS for $499,000. There is no way in a million years that is a $499,000 house. That is a $650,000 house. But they price it low to get, the people with a $500,000 budget, they get them in the door. And then the people who are up to 700,000, they're knowing that they're going to have to look at a lower price. And that's why you'll have offers that, there's 20 offers. I've been competing against offers where there's 24 offers. So imagine being the listing agent and having to go through 24 offers, and it all gets emailed. So then you have to print them off, keep them in order, organize them, and it's just crazy. It's not something that I enjoy, but at the same time, let's just say you price something at what it should be, which is, let's just say it's listed at 650,000. You will get a lot of people that won't even go to view it because they feel that the winning bid has to be 700,000 when it's priced at what it should be selling for. And
this is always, or just now?
This is just now.
just now. So it's not like this is just always. So that, I mean, banks must go crazy because they have no idea the values until it closes.
Yeah, it's a pretty good guessing game, and it's it's really hard. Like you have an idea based on, like in Oshawa, for instance, most popular type of home is the bungalows, like a 1960s 3-bedroom, uh, 1-bathroom bungalow with a basement apartment or an unfinished basement or something. And so those go, if it's nice, between 650 and 700,000. If it's a duplex, it goes between 675 and 750. If it's it needs a lot of work, then you're talking maybe high 500,000s. And
Okay. So what would you price
banks
one at?
will know. So I would price it at like $599
Oh
because
my
you're getting people in.
So
Yeah,
funny.
but you have to, because if you price it at $649, if it's a really nice, something that's been fully renovated, you can start off higher because people will want to go and see it because it's really nice, and they'll take their chances and they'll be okay with that. But if it's something that's just kind of mediocre, people won't go and check it out. So you have to price it lower because people know they have to bid up. And at first it's kind of funny where every time I get a new buyer, it's kind of like the first offer, I tell them, I'm like, just go with, if you get it, you're happy. You don't care how much you beat the other person by. If you don't get it, you're okay with it because you gave it your best shot. And at first, they always start off a little bit over what it sells for, and they progressively go up because then they understand the market more. But I can't sit there and push that on them, because if they get their first offer, they're right away going to feel like they might have overpaid because they haven't gone through seeing that, you know, something was listed at 600, they offered 650, and the place sold for 700. Like they haven't gone through that to see how close these offers can be.
Yeah, that's the same thing here. And I even tell, you know, the buyers I was talking about, the recent ones, and I was like, you may, because when they liked a house and they wanted to write an offer, and I'm like, I told them about the escalation clause and what you and I just spoke about. I said, okay, so how much you want to escalate? And they're like, well, what do you think? And I say, well, houses are landing. I think the house was like 670. I said, houses are landing around 740. And they're like, no, we'll go to 700. And I'm thinking, okay. And I said, you know, you may have to lose a few houses. And they looked at me like, did you really just say that to us? And I was like, we'll see. So then they lost that one, they lost another one, and the third house they got, you know, because you get into like the zone of understanding the culture of what's happening and understanding that realtors like myself and yourself who work in this full time, we kind of know what we're talking about. And it's up to you, Mr. Buyer, if you want to listen or not. But I'm not telling you this for my own good. I'm telling you because you're asked what you need to do to get the house. So it's really interesting. I mean, it also makes me sad because it's such an emotional roller coaster, and I just see so much disappointment and frustration, and like you have to like let them rest for a little bit. And it's like, all right, let's get back on. Let's just keep going and take the emotion out of it, because you're going to end up in the house you're meant to be in. I do believe that, but it takes a little bit of perseverance in this market for sure, and tenacity.
Yeah. Do you feel, because I get asked a lot, what do you feel is going to happen with the market? And so I'll go over my answer after, but I'm curious to know what your views are, especially being in the States, where it's kind of like, you know, we're separate countries, but we're kind of attached at many different parts throughout Canada and the US. So what's your take on, you know, what's going to happen in your opinion? And obviously,
obviously we don't have a crystal ball. Obviously we don't know. But now that at least the election has sort of subsided, although it's not quite the way it should be, but enough that we kind of can breathe a little bit. I think that it's going to continue the way it is now until we have a vaccine. This is what I think. I could be wrong, but this is what I think. I think that the inventory is not going to increase until one of two things happens. The first being that everything just calms down and people start to feel better about buying and selling and going in each other's houses and open houses. And that's the good thing that will happen, that will increase inventory. But I think interest rates are going to stay low for a while. They kind of have to, unless something tragic happens. Although when Pfizer came out with the vaccine information the other day, interest rates did spike for a day, but then they went back down. But the second thing I think is going to happen, this is what I alluded to at the beginning, is that there's a lot of people here in the States, I don't know if it's the same in Canada, that took advantage of the forbearance programs that a lot of banks were offering because of the pandemic. And some people took advantage of it because it was offered. And they said, why not? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how long this is going to happen, especially people that have small businesses or independent contractors like us. I mean, you just didn't know. Other people took it because they absolutely had to. They lost their job. They lost their company. But it's only for a certain amount of time. At first it was 3 months, then they extended it to 6 months. And depending on your bank and who your lender is, it can be different. But a lot of them are up around now. So people have to go back to paying their mortgage and their property taxes and their insurance and everything that they kind of put on hold. And nothing has really changed. We had an election, but elections don't cause change. New government does, but that takes time. And the government here has put a moratorium on foreclosures, and that's also by state. But once that's lifted and people can't pay their mortgage because they've lost their job or they've lost their business, or even if they're furloughed, so they're still employed, but they're not getting paid, which is not counted in the unemployment numbers, they're going to be in trouble. And here in the States, it takes a long time to foreclose on a property. It probably takes 18 to 24 months, especially now, because there has been a moratorium. So it's a delayed, but I think, unfortunately, in about 18 to 24 months, we're going to see more inventory for both good and bad reasons. And that will balance the market out a little bit, but it's also going to cause a lot of distress. Sorry to be all doom and gloom. The good news is interest rates will still be low. And if you do buy for 30 years at that interest rate, and so you're doing, but I just think that things are going to have to change. They can't stay like this.
Yeah, no, I do agree. So I feel like the number one thing that is causing everything to go crazy was, and I explained this during when things were dead here, is I was trying to if you were looking to buy, I was telling people buy, because right now is dead. And I'm like, people that have their homes listed, they might be pretty desperate because they bought when things were crazy and now they're trying to sell their house. And it was just dead. Like homes that were listed at 500,000 that should have been 650 or 600 ended up selling for 500,000 or 520. Like they would have gone up a little bit more, but nothing compared to what it was. And so I was trying to convince people to be like, now's a really good time to buy because people are scared and they don't want to go do showings and everything. So I was like, buy. And so the ones that did, it worked out well for them. The ones that didn't, it's been a little harder right now. But I forget where I was going with this.
What do you think is going to happen?
So like I was explaining to people, I was like, right now there's very little inventory and there's very little buyers because people are scared. They don't know what to do. Once things kind of normalize a little bit, it's going to be like this feeding frenzy where it's like you have a whole pool of fish and you dump in a whole bunch of fish food. And that's what happened at first. Once things happened, it was like anybody who had been thinking about selling, they started to list. And then anybody who had been thinking about buying, they started buying. So it took off really fast. And then now it just got to the point where people aren't selling. Inventory is like super low. Like here in the GTA, 6 months is typically a balanced market. We're sitting right now, and so 3 months of inventory would be a 3 months of inventory would be a seller's market. We're sitting at about 1 month of inventory right now. So if no new listings were to hit the market from now until 1.5 months or about a month from now, so all inventory would be sold out within that time frame. So inventory is super low. The only thing that's going to change it is what you mentioned about the mortgage. Here it's being referred to as like the mortgage deferral, where people had deferred, and that was up in September. So it was people who, that is done and they're going to struggle a little bit. So they have to, sell because people, nobody wants to lose their house by it being taken from them.
Right.
They want to be able to sell it, so at least they can, they get something out of it. So once that inventory adjusts, then I think it will go back to normal. But I think we're far from that because builders are not building a ton, not compared to how many people are coming here. Like we get on average in Canada as a whole, 300,000 people per year. I guess the Canadian government announced that they want to increase by 100,000 for the next 4 years. So now,
where do they come from? I'm just curious. Where do people come? Are they coming from the States?
All over. There's people from India and Pakistan, China, and then you do get the States. Like those are the three. Like India, Pakistan, and China would be, to me, the most I see that are coming here. And then it's the people from the States that are coming as well. People have, they just want to come here because there's a lot of people, and some people have reached out to me that they're living in the States and they've had a hard time with immigration to the point where they just they gave up on trying, and they're just, let me just try and get into Canada. So although we were a second choice, they came here and they got accepted. And so there's been a few people in that situation. Because I always ask when people reach out, why are you coming to Canada? What made you come here? And it's always same kind of thing. Either they've dreamed about it ever since being a small child, and now their plan is coming into place, or it's people that, I came to the States, I tried to become an American citizen, and I had a hard time with it. And so it's Canada's right here, and then all my friends that are in the States, I'm still close. So that's kind of where they stumbled upon us.
Yeah, it's been a very disruptive last 4 years in the States. It's just our country's becoming a lot more divisive, and people talk about moving to Canada all the time. So I was just curious if they really did it.
Well, I saw a billboard sign, and I think this was when Trump was first elected, and I forget who it was or where it was. I think it was in New York or something, and it was this billboard saying your party didn't win, thinking about moving to Canada, give me a call or whatever. And I thought that was just a great billboard, because I'm not only did it make the Canadian news to be this person put out a billboard to try and help people sell their house that are looking to move to Canada. So the first thing I did is I friggin' emailed him to be hey, if you ever get people that are looking to move to the Toronto area, I'm here and I can help. And they called me thinking I wanted to buy a house with them, and I kind of had to explain what I meant by that. But yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, I mean, people talk a lot about it, where I am. I mean, DC is, it's a really, really fascinating city and super interesting. A lot of fun. Like I said, a lot of great restaurants. We're on the water. People don't realize that. But people talk about going to Canada all the time. But I don't know if they're just saying that or if they're actually really going.
I don't know. Maybe, but and then, so in Washington, so where do you find you focus more of your real estate in, or is it pretty split between the Washington, Maryland area?
It's funny. It just depends. Like I said, I grew up here. I was born in DC, but I went to school in Potomac in Maryland. But when I left for college, I stayed away for 22 years. And when I moved back here from California, my first listing was in DC. So I was predominantly just in DC. And then I got a listing in Potomac. So then it pulled me out to Potomac. So it's I really just kind of go where the business goes. So it just depends on, I'll get a flurry. Now I would say I'm more Maryland right now than DC, which is fine because I live here, and it just organically worked out that way. But it also really flipped because pre-pandemic, everybody was moving into the city. So DC was always super, super hot. And it's not because of the politics or government, because those people usually rent. It's just a very cosmopolitan city and a great city. And now everybody's moving out of the city into the suburbs. So whereas where I am in Potomac was pretty cold, and moving in towards DC, Bethesda, Chevy Chase, that border DC, but still in Maryland, was much better. Now people are coming out to where I am because they want the backyard, they want the deck, they want the patio, they want the land. And it's really a direct result of the pandemic. So it'll be curious to see if it shifts back, once we go back to normal, which I hope we will. I don't think it's going to be before next fall. My kids I have 2 teenagers and they're going to school from home right now, which is awesome. As I'm hidden away in my office. But, I don't think it's going to be interesting to see what happens if it switches back, because, all the millennials are like, we don't need cars. We're going to take the metro and the subway and, ride our bikes and our skateboards. And now, like, nobody wants to be in public transportation. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what happens,
I'm just going to, I'm actually going to do a screen share because I probably should have done this at the beginning.
What are we doing? You did tell everybody this is my first live, whatever we're doing. So whoever's seeing it later, if I'm looking weird places, it's because I don't know what I'm doing. So what are you sharing your screen about? What are you showing me?
I'm just going to show the map, because you're talking about. So everyone would know Washington, D.C., but when you're talking about being in Maryland, I bet you, I know for sure before talking with you, I never knew that Maryland, Washington, and Virginia were also close to each other. Where you could actually be licensed in all 3, like you were saying earlier.
Oh yeah. A lot of people are. And I don't want to give the wrong history, but I think that D.C. took parts of Maryland and Virginia to create it to begin with, and then I think Virginia took a part back. The history of all that. But they call it locally, they call it the DMV, which most people think it's where you want to get your car fixed. And unless you live here, you don't understand that's DC, Maryland, Virginia, DMV. All right, so I can't see. That's why I have my glasses on. So what are we looking at? It's the White House. So you're in Virginia now. So see the water? See the blue water? I can't So that's going to separate Virginia from DC and Maryland. So you can't see me pointing though, can you? So if you go straight up from where you are, not that far up. Yeah, so now you're in Maryland. See Bethesda right to your other way. No, it's here. Don't go anywhere. Come back on the map. What are you doing? All right, you're in Washington. On the left side of the water is Virginia. Yeah, Virginia. On the right side is DC and Maryland. So that's another reason why I don't work in Virginia, is because you have to cross that river, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you only have 1 or 2 bridges, it creates a lot of traffic, and it's just, I don't know, it's a pain. Whereas Maryland, you have a direct line into DC. So if you go a little bit north of Washington, you'll see, right there, go back down. See, there's Silver Spring, and then to the left of that is Bethesda. So that's what I was talking about. You see the dotted line? That's your border. Right below, that's the border. So that's DC. And then on the other side is either Maryland or Virginia. So it's just like right smack in the middle. Are you gone? And then I see Bethesda. That's where my office is. And then if you go even more north, you see Potomac over here, North Bethesda, Rockville. That's where I am. I'm between Rockville and Potomac right now. And then all this along the Potomac River that's where I was hiking, where I told you I wiped out and I look like I played hockey. But down here in DC, in Georgetown, it's right on the water as well. So you can boat there, you can paddleboard. It's a really, really cool city. You all should come down. Come from Canada. That's your little geography lesson. And then if you go all the way, if you pulled out. So if you go all the way to the ocean, you're still going to be in Maryland. And you can go, here's Annapolis. Well, this is the bay. So there's Annapolis up there. I mean, Maryland's a pretty cool state because you have a lot of different places. You can be literally right on the water on the bay, or you could be really close to the city, or you can go all the way to the coast to like Ocean City, Maryland, which is on the actual Atlantic Ocean. So it's a cool little state. It's got a lot of different cultures in it.
Okay. Like if you're in Washington, because you're talking, I have no idea how far Annapolis to Washington would actually be. like how far, like on the map, it looks far, but is that like an hour? Is it
No.
half?
Yeah, it's about an hour. About an hour. So
Okay.
like where I am, if you go back up to Potomac into DC, it's probably, I can hit the DC border in 20 minutes, which is
Okay.
not a lot. But if you're in Bethesda, you can literally, it's 5 minutes because you're really bordering DC, so, and that's Maryland. Because Virginia, you got to cross the river.
Oh, okay.
It's a cool place. It's a cool
No.
place. Like I said, you can be in the same state and go to the beach or go into the city or go to, Annapolis is on the water as well. It's on the bay. People go there to have a lot of hard-shelled crabs. It's different cultures. So it's a cool little state. But most of the time when I'm outside of the area and people ask where I'm from, I'll say DC because nobody really knows where Maryland is.
Okay.
And then you're just right up north from me.
Okay. Yeah, I'll pull it up.
There's Montreal. So yeah.
Yeah. So like I was born and raised in Brampton, and I moved to Oshawa.
Mm-hmm.
So right now I'm in Whitby, which is in between Ajax and Oshawa. And I lived in Oshawa since for about 5 or 6 years. And then we bought a new house from the same builder we were in, and we moved to Whitby. And I find a lot of people that first come to Canada, they're coming to Toronto because they know it.
Right.
They're either coming to Toronto or Mississauga, Brampton because they have friends and family in these two areas. And then when they're ready to buy a house, then they come to the Durham region because the Durham region, which consists of like Bowmanville and Ajax, Pickering and everything, is relatively, and it's not much anymore, but it's cheaper than the whole west part of Toronto.
But you're all on the water, it looks like. All these places you're talking about, or is it just Toronto that's on the water?
Yeah, so no, all these places. So this is Lake Ontario right here, so it's not an ocean or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, no, I know. But still, it's nice to be on the water.
It is. It's good for like boating and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so Hamilton is getting more expensive, but places like Burlington and Oakville is probably one of the most expensive areas. Like the most expensive house in Canada, I think, was listed in Oakville for like $50 million. But an entry-level starter home is over $1 million. Like it's just so expensive there because it's probably well known as being one of the best places to live in Canada. So if you have like a big budget for buying a house, I find a lot of people are attracted to Oakville because of what they pretty much what they hear.
Yeah.
And then so there's two markets. So there's this market, which is crazy because people living like every day. And then the other market, which is getting insane, is cottage country. And so we're having it where up here, which from Toronto to Collingwood is about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Okay. And then where is it? Like, up here, like Midland, everything like that. Again, it's like about 2 hours away. So places there 2 years ago you can get for 700,000 are now going for like 1.1 million. Like it just.
And do people live there and work in Toronto?
Not necessarily. Some people do, and they do the commute, especially with COVID. A lot of companies have allowed people to pretty much work from home a lot. And so they're like, well, why the heck am I living in the city? I can go buy a place on the water cheaper than what I could buy in the city and, be on the lake, get a boat, like have a better enjoyment of water. Right. And so a lot of people have been doing that because they're able to work 3 or 4 days of the week from home and then have to go to the office once a week. So it's been easy to do.
I wonder if that's going to change once we get a vaccine, or if companies are seeing that they don't really need the real estate for their offices when people can work from home. Do you know what I'm saying? It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and honestly, I've heard of companies saying like they're shutting down their offices or they're downsizing it just to have that central meeting place that they can go to, where they've realized that people can work from home. And I had one person that actually, he immigrated to Canada from Mexico, and he actually negotiated in with part of his salary that 3 days of the week he could work from home. So that's where he's like, he can move to Whitby and commute to Toronto, only having to do it 2 days a week. That's not bad at all.
Yeah, and I know. I have clients like that as well that are realize that they're going to be able to work from home more. So they're now looking further out from the city to get, more house for your money. Because the closer in, like in Bethesda and Chevy Chase and in DC proper, you can't get a house for, you can get a house for under $1 million, but it's really small, and if you want just a bigger house, it's going to be over $1 million. But if you come a little bit further out and you can get this, more square footage or more backyard or a bigger lot for the same money. And I'm seeing people are now, like I said, they're starting to trend out, whereas before it was all about getting closer to the city. But we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. I'm curious. I wish I knew for sure, because then I could,
right.
Don't we all invest in the right areas and stuff. Like,
right.
I know right now in Toronto is, people who are looking for condos, and who knows if this is going to change at any point. I feel it will, because the thing that really changed the Toronto condo market, which was crazy for so long, was Airbnb changing their rules, which eliminated a lot of the Airbnb suites that were actually in these condos in Toronto. So you had landlords or people who own these Airbnbs that had to decide, do they want to transition it to single family or like long-term rentals, which would have like a minimum lease of a year, or do they want to sell it? And so you've had it where, a whole bunch of the population just started like renting out their condos, like as a year lease, not like you can stay there for 2 weeks, or they ended up selling it. So you've had a huge influx of inventory. So the whole like supply demand curve for the Toronto condo market has completely reversed from everything else, like because there's just so much supply out there. And then the demand, which is good because you actually have a little bit of an opportunity there where it's not like you're going to have to overbid, where there's actually selection. And that's like nice. Has it been like that at all with Washington?
Yeah, 100%. The condo market is really soft right now. And I have investors that traditionally would have bought, condos to then hold as rentals, and they only want single families because, like I said, we just don't know when this is going to change. And people just don't want to share building space. They don't want to share common space with other people right now. And so the condo market in DC, which was so hot for so long, and there was construction being built and all, harder to get a condo than to get a single family, now is completely reversed, in Bethesda as well. And I kind of understand it, because I try to put myself, been doing this for so long that it only stays interesting because I try to put myself in really my clients' shoes. Like, what would I do if I were them? And I, had a family, where would I feel comfortable? And obviously I do what they want, but I listen to them and I understand it. I understand that you want to feel safe in your home. So I don't know when it's going to change. It'll be really, really interesting to see what happens. If people will, once there's a vaccine and people get comfortable and going back to, like, I don't know if anyone's going to ever shake hands again. I don't know what you think about this. That's a whole other conversation, but it'll just be interesting to see if the trend goes back into urban life, back into public transportation, back into city life, or if it stays this way for a while. I think it's going to stay this way for a while.
Yeah, I think so. It's going to be quite the adjustment. Like before, when you were going out, you would have to make sure that you had your phone and your wallet. Mm-hmm. And now it's phone, wallet, mask, hand sanitizer. And it's like, I don't know, like if I had to go somewhere without a mask now, it would feel really weird. Like really weird. You go to a restaurant and here, like in the GTA, you can go to a restaurant. You have to have your mask on the minute you leave the table. But if you're sitting down, you take it off. Is it similar where you are?
Exactly the same. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So you guys haven't figured a way to eat with your mask on. Okay, good.
No. And it's also like within the state of Maryland, the county that I work predominantly in, Montgomery County, is even stricter than the rest of the state. We're more like DC because we border DC. So you can still only have like 3 people in an open house. We just got stricter recently where you could have 50 people. Now it's 25 people at a gathering. And, this stuff will change too. You just got to have to go with it. And I just all I keep telling my clients is the same thing. It's like, if you want to make a move, we'll do it. I'll help you out and it will happen. You'll end up in the house you want to be in, but you just got to be patient and tenacious and persevere and it'll happen. And I think as long as we all keep a positive mindset and just work through what the present situation is, then It'll all work out. I believe that.
I think so too. And I think too, people have adjusted. So like you would have it before when you were selling your house, you would be home and then you would leave when they're showing. And are you finding, because I find it a lot here, where people are actually staying in a hotel while their house is listed, so they don't have to worry about like anything. Like they'll go in a hotel for a week, because here it's typical 5 days before offers are reviewed, and then you have 2 days just for whatever. But so a lot of the houses I'm going to view, the people aren't even staying there; they're staying at a hotel. Is it similar where you are?
It's better if they've already moved out. So there's a lot more vacant homes than before, but hotels, no, because that's not common practice at all. I mean, if they go away for the weekend, well, houses are selling here in a couple of days. It's not even taking a week. But if they go away, it's for the weekend to see family, whatever, but not to stay in a hotel. I don't have anybody that's actually stayed in hotels. But if you can sell your house first and then leave it vacant, that's the best way to do it. It's just safer for everybody and much easier to show. Because I don't know about you, but I'm doing a lot of virtual showings first. So I'll FaceTime, and then maybe the husband will come or the wife will come, and if they like it. So it's like 3 showings for every one house. And then they go really quickly. So then you got to write the offer really quickly and make a decision. So it's kind of crazy, but it is what it is. What are you going to do, right?
So like if a place is listed, let's just say it's listed on a Monday, and you bring your buyer in there Monday, they're like, Caryn, I love the place, I want to buy it. Can you write an offer that day and submit it?
You can write it. I don't know if you can submit it. So basically, a lot of us will put the houses on a Wednesday or Thursday to try to get through the weekend. And like if I just put one of my properties as a listing, I put one of my properties on, I think it was on a Thursday, and you just still never really know, at least for me. I never want to say offer deadline is Sunday or Monday if I don't have an offer in hand, because I don't know. I just think it's like presumptuous. Or maybe I've been through too many different markets to do that. But once somebody says I'm writing an offer, then I'll set the deadline. And I think it's fair to make it, 4 days later. So if I put it on a Thursday, I'll make it for Monday to give people a chance to see the house. And we do pre-inspections here. And I encourage them, because I'd much rather a buyer inspect the house than just take it without knowing anything at all. So you do have to spend money on inspection. Depending on the size of the house, you could spend anywhere from $400, or if it's a walk and talk, it could be like $350. If you want a full inspection, it'll double. So you do spend money, but I think it's worth it. And you have to make sure the sellers are open to that. And if they're living in the house, it's more complicated. But if they're not, we encourage free inspections.
Okay. So you kind of do like where you list it on the Wednesday, Thursday, and then you kind of review the offers on the Monday.
I guess.
So it's similar. Yeah, it's similar here in that sense. And that's the only reason homes, like with how crazy it is right now, average days on market are still in the teens. And it's not because homes are taking that long to sell. It's because you'll have some, like there was one I viewed a week and a half ago, and they had 8 days. Like they listed it on a Friday and they weren't reviewing offers until the following Sunday.
Like 8 days, 9 days later?
Yeah. So it was like, you could like it, love it, whatever. If you're going to submit an offer. Yeah. And it was just kind of like that was super long, but typically it would be like listed on a Wednesday, Thursday, reviewing offers on a Monday, Tuesday. And it's just, best offer takes it. And pretty much it's, they'll say presenting at 4. So, to make your offer good up until about 8 or 9 o'clock at night, just, because by the time if you're dealing with 10 offers, the listing agent has to go through them, present them, get them signed. So you give a little bit of time on that sense, but that's the only reason why days on market is what it is, because everything is selling so fast.
How long are your contracts? I'm just curious.
What do you mean by contracts?
Your offers, don't you write them down?
Well, I don't know what you mean. I don't know what you're asking.
I mean, are they verbal? But do you submit something in writing? You do, right?
Oh, yeah.
How long are they?
The forms. And so I'm going to ask you the same question, because I was actually thinking that earlier. But so the contract that you would submit with an offer, the first one is offer summary, which just confirms that you're submitting an offer. The second one is the confirmation of cooperation, which outlines which agent or brokerage is representing which side of the party. And then there's the agreement of purchase and sale. So your agreement of purchase and sale is about 7 pages. Confirmation of cooperation is 2 pages. Offer summary is 1. And then brokerages, I'd say 90% of the time, they have a Schedule B, which is their terms and conditions, which, they pretty much all outline the same thing. The listing brokerage can advertise the sale price at days on market of the listing for their marketing materials. The deposit check is held in a brokerage trust account and is in an interest-bearing account. But if you want to get that interest back, you have to give your social insurance number to the listing brokerage, along with pay a $50 administration charge to get that deposit interest back.
Do they do that?
Nobody does it because the $50 fee is more than what the interest is, because trust accounts, it's not a high interest savings account, so it doesn't get you very much. So that's our contract. So how is it?
How many pages is that? Like 20 total?
No, it would be 1, 2, 10, 11, about 11 pages.
And that's the whole thing?
Yeah, and if it's firm, that's all. But let's just say it's conditional, then you'll have a notice of fulfillment or a waiver or an amendment. If there's stuff where, if you're lucky and you get a home inspection and there's issues, you can have the sellers try and fix it. But that's kind of it. How many are yours?
So the whole thing, like when I'm submitting an offer, probably about 60.
Okay, so how long does it take you to do an offer if you're filling out 60 pages? And
so part of that, about half of that, or maybe a little less than half, of the seller's disclosures, right? But the buyer has to go through and sign all of them. So you have the seller's disclosures. Usually they'll be online, so we can just download them. And then we have the contract itself is 10 pages, but there's all these addendums, addendum. So it turns out to be about 60 pages. Okay. But I've done it for so long. For me, it doesn't take long. There's only so many real terms, to go through, and everything else is boilerplate. It's very redundant. Remember, I'm in DC. It's a very litigious part of the country. Yeah. So lawyers wrote all these forms, writing one after the other, and a lot of them are repetitive and redundant. But at the end of the day, that's the actual email you're getting is 60 pages.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's
good times.
That's crazy. Yeah.
But when I get I have a multiple offer summary sheet, and they're only, like I said, there's only probably 10 different terms on it, from the price to the escalation, like we spoke about, to the closing date, the settlement attorney, inspections, how many days. We have different things here like radon and stuff that you probably don't have there. You might have radon in Canada, actually. Oh. And so it's, when you break it down, it's only about 10 different things to really look at.
Okay.
But it's a lot of paperwork.
How long does it take you? Because I've had it where I view a property and I'm doing the offer in my truck. So I bring my laptop, I do the offer in my truck. I use DocuSign, get all the signatures. So from the time I start to when the listing agent has my offer, it might be 30 minutes to 45 minutes.
I could do it on my phone. I can't see that well anymore, so it's a little harder. But I could. I could. It's just a lot more. And like I said, it depends. It's a first-time buyer, or if somebody's done it before. If they've written an offer before, and I don't have to explain the whole thing, then I could do it pretty quickly. But if I'm on my computer, I could do it really quickly. In my car or on the phone, it would just purely from a logistical point of view, it's a little harder. But I've just done it so many times that it's. I know what's important and what's not, and when I'm the listing agent, I'm going through the offers, I also know where to look. So I'm not sitting with my seller passing him every page and he's looking through 60 pages. It's not what we do. Mind you, if they want to do that, we can do that too. And that takes a lot longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. I didn't know it was that long, but it seems more in line to, because when I've bought in houses and I'm dealing with the lawyers and the lawyers are having me sign stuff, it's in and around that 60 pages. So when you say you are doing everything, now I understand why you said that, because you are doing all of the documents that typically my lawyer would be doing.
Correct.
So okay.
It's interesting because, like I said, in a lot of states, lawyers do the work, but here in Maryland and DC, the realtors are the ones that are, we're not creating the forms. Lawyers have created them, but we're filling them all in. But we're the ones doing it. The only time you're really, I mean, listen, anybody can talk to a lawyer whenever they want. It's not like you're not allowed to. But the culture, traditionally, it's the realtors who are filling in all the contracts, submitting them, and then the only lawyer you really see is at the settlement table. And like I said, they don't represent the buyer or the seller, just the contract.
Okay, it's neat how it's so different there.
I know.
I'm glad
Listen,
ours isn't 60 pages.
I'm gonna have to cut out because I got my kids here, and I'm gonna have to go check on them because it's 9:30, and I got to make sure they're doing their homework from our homeschool.
Okay, well, it was nice having you on here. And for anybody looking to move to the Washington, D.C. area or Maryland, reach out to Caryn, and she'll be more than happy to help with all your redirection. She has her YouTube channel up. I don't have any links that I can post for you, but I will put it into the comments. So anybody who's watching this after the fact, you can hop onto her YouTube channel, which will, help paint a picture of what it's like to live there. Everyone, thanks for watching. As you've bounced in and out, I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, you can reach out anytime. My contact information is below in the comments, along with Caryn's as well.
Thanks, Brad.
Nice meeting you again, Caryn.
See ya.
Okay.